Jaya Sotara Sadashi Srimad HH Mukunda Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Sotara Sadashi Srimad Savange Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shekaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navadvitam Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri New Govardhana Dhama Ki Jai. Shama Veda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Naraskricham Naram Shaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nasa Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 3rd chapter, text number 20. Snigdha Smitava Lokena Vacha Piyusha Kopaya Charitrena Navadyena Shinikena Chatmana Snigdha Smitavya Lokena Vacha Piyusha Kalpaya Charitrena Navedyaina Shriniketana Chatmana Snigdha gentle. Smita Ava Lokena, by a glance with a sweet smile. Vacha, by words. Piyusha Kalpaya, compared to nectar. Charitena, by character. Anavadyena, without flaw. Shri, fortune. Iketena, residence. Cha, and. Atmana, by his transcendental body. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face, his nectarine words, and his flawless character. Responsibly. He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face, his nectarine words, and his flawless character. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the previous verse, it is described that Lord Shri Krishna, being situated in the truth of Sankhya philosophy, is detached from all kinds of matter. In the present verse, it is described that he is the residence of the goddess of fortune. These two things are not at all contradictory. Lord Krishna is detached from the variegatedness of the inferior nature, but he is in eternal blissful enjoyment of the spiritual nature, or his internal potency. One who has a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand this distinction between the external and the internal potencies. In Bhagavad Gita, the internal potency is described as the para-prakriti. In the Vishnu Purana also, the internal potency of Vishnu is described as para-shakti. The Lord is never detached from the association of the para-shakti. This para-shakti and her manifestations are described in the Brahma Samhita 537 as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitavi. The Lord is eternally joyful and cognizant in the taste derived from the transcendental, in a taste derived from such transcendental bliss. Negation of the variegatedness of the inferior energy does not necessitate negation of the positive transcendental bliss of the spiritual world. Therefore, the Lord's gentleness, His smile, His character, and everything related to Him are all transcendental. Such manifestations of the internal potency are the reality, of which the material shadow is only a temporary representation from which everyone with proper knowledge must be detached. The verse again, He was there in His transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with His usual gentle and sweetly smiling face, His nectarine words, and His flawless character. Namagyana Timanandasya Ganaranjana Salakaya Chaksur Unmiditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Svaparantikam. This verse is indirectly indicating that Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva is the essential philosophy of Krishna consciousness. It's a very difficult thing to understand. Prabhupada has explained this in different ways. Some people have said that a rose is the sun, but Prabhupada has explained that a rose is the smiling energy of the sun. So the sun is one thing, but its energy is diffused. It is everywhere. It is chlorophyll is the way that flowers are made beautiful through the sun, is the way all plants grow, is very expert. So this Achintya Veda Veda Tattva is difficult to understand, how one can be simultaneously one and different. As Prabhupada says, this is not contradictory, that Krishna can have a place of residence, and at the same time, He can be smaller than the smallest, He can be greater than the greatest, and He can know what all of us are thinking, and He can control all the universes. This is simultaneously one and different. Krishna can be known as the darling son of Jasoda, but He has control over all the universes. So He has a very unusual two aspects. One is very personal, and He appears to be a human being of inviolable character, with a smiling face and nectarine words and a flawless character. His words are so nectarine that even when He is joking, everyone is entertained by Him. He says to Radharani that when she asks where His residence is, He says, "My residence is in your eyes." This is a very hard thing to understand, how Krishna can reside in someone else's eyes, but it's actually true, because He's simultaneously one and different. He can be the supreme lover and the supreme controller at the same time. This is simultaneously one and different. So it's also explained that Krishna, when He was in His form of Lord Chaitanya on the earth, He exhibited the character of a total sannyasi. He was very strict. And even when one of His followers glanced lustfully at a young woman, and later committed suicide, Lord Chaitanya was not disturbed, because he thought that was the natural punishment for someone who was lusty. So he engaged in a very strict way from sannyasa, and he only allowed his women disciples to bow down from a great distance. And real sannyasa is described in the Bhagavad Gita, in the I think it's the 6th chapter, the 1st verse, that a real sannyasi is not one who avoids all regulated principles, one who lights no fire, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. Real sannyas is as it is described here, is mentioning with proper knowledge that one must be detached from the material world. That is a real sannyas. It doesn't matter whether one is wearing orange or whether one is wearing white. The real renunciation is important for everyone. Everyone can be detached. It's very difficult to understand because in the Gayatri Mantra it is said that we have to meditate on the Supreme Lord who in the conjugal rasa, and the conjugal rasa is considered the highest rasa, it is also the lowest form of existence. Sometimes, but not usually, but on very rare occasions, Krishna violates these principles. What are considered very abominable features in the material world can sometimes be slated as pure. As Arjuna was the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to make Arjuna angry and to have him engage in fighting, which was his duty. But this is abominable by material standards. There's a strong peace movement around the world that says that there should be no war, there should be no conflict, and yet Krishna was advising Arjuna to fight. And there's another instance that when Karna was, he was a great hero and said to be even a stronger warrior than Arjuna, was off of his chariot. Krishna said that now you can attack him because he is vulnerable. And Arjuna was amazed. He said, Karna was amazed at Krishna. He said, "Oh, what are you doing, Arjuna? I'm not on my chariot," because it's a violation of Kshatriya principles to attack a person who is on the ground, walking, a pedestrian, not on a chariot. But Krishna advised him to do it, even though it was a violation of Kshatriya codes. And another instance, when Bhima was fighting Duryodhana, they had an extensive club fight, and no one seemed to be winning. It was just that Duryodhana was very expert, and Bhima was also very expert in club fighting. So Krishna gave he gave when Bhishma was fighting with Jarasandha also, Krishna gave him. And it was a kind of a no-win situation that the two club fighters, Bhishma and Duryodhana were fighting, and Krishna knew the whole history of Duryodhana, and he knew the whole history of Jarasandha, and that Jarasandha was at one point was completely detached. He was in two pieces, and Krishna gave a sign that indicated that Jarasandha was in two pieces, and that Krishna could kill him could end the fight by ripping him apart in a certain way. Krishna had given this thing. It was a violation of Kshatriya principles to win a war. And when he asked Bhishma to strike Duryodhana below the waist, that was also a violation of Kshatriya principles. It is illegal and against Kshatriya principles to strike someone below the belt, and yet Krishna advised that this happen. In another instance, Krishna's followers, the wives of the Brahmins, they were eager to help Krishna. Krishna feigned a very painful experience that he was having a headache, and he asked his followers to find some solution to it. And nobody was willing to do it. Everyone thought that if I give something to Krishna, I will go to hell. But the gopis, who were married women, immediately parted with the dust from their feet to give Krishna, because that he said to his followers to ask the gopis what they will do, if they will give anything. And they immediately gave the dust of their feet, even though this meant that if giving the dust of their feet meant for them to go to hell. So Krishna was asking them to violate the most sacred principles of material life. That is, a wife has to be faithful to her husband. And sometimes the gopis went out in the rasa dance in the middle of what he called the dead of night. I don't know if you know, Dead of Night was a horror movie that was made in 1946 by the British called Dead of Night. And I think it had to do with zombies or something. But it became a very, very popular phrase, and Prabhupada used it, dead of night, that the gopis went in the dead of night, they were married, and they went to dance with a young boy. And that's a violation of everything that's ordinary, in ordinary life, to be unfaithful to one's husband and to dance in the dead of night, to go to a flute-playing young boy, to dance in the rasa dance. So there are many instances, not many, but a few, that Krishna would violate regulator principles. Another one that is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita is that Sanatana Goswami had to bribe the jailer to get out of his prison and Lord Chaitanya, and join Lord Chaitanya. So the question is asked in Chaitanya Charitamrita, how is that a bribing and black marketing money? And he bribed him with gold coins. Sanatan bribed the jailer with gold coins, and when he didn't have enough gold coins, he doubled the amount. And he told the jailer said, well, what will I tell my master, the Nawab, that how have you escaped from jail? And so Sanatana Goswami, because he was an expert diplomat and had been a minister in the government of Hussein Shah, said that he would tell him a story. He would devise what Prabhupada called a trick to tell the Muslim ruler. The trick was that a prisoner would have to, in those days, they used to evacuate or pass stool in the fields. And the trick was that the jailer accompanied him, as they always do, to their prisoners. And while he was accompanying him and getting ready to defecate or do his business, he jumped into the river. And the current was so swift and it carried him away so fast that the jailer couldn't reach him and couldn't even see him. And that was the story that he told. And he was absolved from letting a prisoner go. So, and there was a case of Vamana also. Vamana was, his spiritual master advised him not, he said, what can I give you? What can you give me? And he was saying to Ambarish Maharaj. And Ambarish said, well, he said, and Krishna said, I just want 3 steps of land. And his guru, Shukracharya, said, oh, he's asking for 3 steps of land. Don't agree to anything he says because he'll take everything away. And Vamana said, all your life you've been teaching us to give everything to Krishna. And now you're saying that we have to deny what Krishna wants. We have to refuse his benedictions. What is this? And so he said, I don't want you. I want to reject you. So he was violating another sacred principle of rejecting his guru, which is considered to be extremely offensive. But in this case, because it was necessary, Krishna made the exception, the unusual exception, that he would reject his guru, and he did that. And Krishna awarded him a very high position as a Vamana, of Ambarish, as giving him a very high position for accepting the request of Krishna to take 3 steps of land, and the 3 steps of land ended up covering the whole universe. So Krishna was very special about this. And Prabhupada once, when in 1967, I think it was in January, he told me the story of Bilva Mangal Thakur. Bilva Mangal Thakur wrote Krishna Karnamrita. He's also known as Leela Shuka. And that book has Vishwanath Chakravarti's Tika, or interpretation, and it's been translated by Bhanu Swami. It's a very important book, and Prabhupada quotes it a lot, Krishna Karnamrita. And the story of Krishna Karnamrita shows that even someone who was very, like Narada Muni in his past life, who was very caught up in material life, was successful. The story that Prabhupada told was that Bilba Mangal was at his father's funeral. And he uncommonly left the funeral early because he wanted to see his girlfriend. His girlfriend was a very beautiful prostitute named Chintamani. And because there was a very rainy, stormy night, he could hardly get to her house. And so the river that he had to cross was very swollen and the current was very swift. So in order to cross it, he thought, well, I'll just grab onto a log and it will ferry me, somehow it'll ferry me across the river. So the log turned out to be a dead body. This is the story that Prabhupada tells. The log that got him across the river was a dead body. And then he finally got to her house, and all the lights were out. The house was dark, and there was only what looked like a rope hanging from the wall, from the top of the wall down to the ground. And Bilba Mangal thought, well, I'll just climb up this rope and I'll get over the wall. And the rope turned out to be a vicious snake, a deadly snake, but he did it anyway. He climbed over the wall and got into her quarters and woke her up. And she was amazed when Bilba Mangal Thakur had done this. She said that, how did you get here? I mean, it was a very stormy and rainy and cold night. How was it possible? And so he told her the whole story, that he left the funeral early, that he ferried across the river in a dead body, that he climbed up a snake to get into it, to get up on top of the wall. And she was very amazed. So she said to him, she said, oh, if only you had this determination to worship Krishna, then your life would be successful. So he took that instruction from his prostitute girlfriend, who was very beautiful, who was also a devotee, and he characterized her as his Partma Pradarshika Guru, the person who first turned him on to Krishna consciousness. So then, as the story goes, as Prabhupada told it, he started wandering and thought, well, I have to somehow or other atone for all this, and I have to be Krishna consciousness. So he went to the home of a Brahmin, and the Brahmin had a very beautiful wife. And Bilba Mangal Thakur was attracted to this wife. And he told the Brahmin, he said, I want to be alone with your wife. And the Brahmin, being a very liberal-minded Brahmin, said, well, of course you can be alone with her. And so he arranged it, and two of them were alone, Bilba Mangal Thakur and the wife of the Brahmin, the beautiful wife. And he said, Mother, he called her Mother, can I please have your hairpin? And she said, oh, yes, of course. And with that, he plucked out his eyes, and he blinded himself. So he wasn't an ordinary person. He knew that he had to do something radical in order to be Krishna conscious. So there's a picture of Bilba Mangal Thakur, sometimes known as Surdas or Leela Shuka, chanting with an ektar, a one-stringed instrument, and just outside of Vrindavan. He went all the way to Vrindavan blind. And while he was chanting, this young boy started to bring him milk. And he came every day with this little container of milk. And finally, Bilba Mangal Thakur realized that was actually Krishna coming to him to hear his beautiful bhajans. According to the story, Bilba Mangal Thakur lived for 700 years and wrote many books, especially Krishna Karnamrita, which is a famous book that Prabhupada has quoted many times. And it just shows that how a person can come from a very degraded background and be converted to Krishna consciousness. Of course, he wasn't an ordinary person, Bilba Mangal Thakur. He was, just as Jai and Madai, they became very corrupted, but they were born in very high-class Brahminical aristocratic families. So similarly, Bilba Mangal Thakur was not an ordinary person. He was born in a very high, but he became in a very high position, but he became very degraded in later life. And so he became very famous. So Prabhupada tells that story. However, one has to be very aware that these are exceptions. The stories that I told are all exceptions. And in the Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada writes about Niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means avoiding all regulative principles all the time, not exceptionally, but all the time. And another meaning of Nimagraha is to be very attached to regulative principles and to think that they're more important than Krishna himself. So these are two instructions that we learn from Nectar of Instruction. That we can't be attached to the principles, and we can't be so attached to Krishna that we can avoid all principles. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Any comments or questions or reflections? Yes?
Maharaj, you said that these stories are exceptions, and I'm wondering, how do we know which stories are meant to be examples for us to follow, and which stories are exceptions?
Well, Prabhupada mentions that they are exceptions. And I mean, the whole Bhagavad Gita is an exception, but with the case of Sanatana Goswami, Prabhupada actually asks, how can black marketeering be part of Krishna consciousness? So the point is that if Krishna asks us to do it, even though it appears to be a violation of regulative principles or a violation of etiquette, it has to be done. So Arjuna was advised to fight, even though fighting is not normal or natural, and rejecting a guru is not considered natural. But these are exceptions, and Prabhupada mentions that. He mentions in the purport that it's not controversial that Krishna has a residence and that he controls the whole, this universe and all the universes, and he can still have a residence. So this is simultaneously one and different. And Prabhupada mentions what are exceptions and what are normal things. And everything that he teaches us in the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam are to follow the regular principles, to be honest, to be forthright, to be religious. These are principles that are mentioned over and over again in the Bhagavad Gita. So we can understand that these are exceptions, and they're not to be followed. They're not to be imitated. We can imitate, we can follow, but not imitate. So just like Haridas Thakur, he was approached by a very beautiful woman in the dead of night, and he said, "Well, I just have to finish my chanting." But he said that Prabhupada said that we cannot imitate this, because if we're attracted by a very beautiful woman in the dead of night, something else is probably going to happen. But Haridas Thakur was exceptional, and he is exceptional, and therefore he is glorified every day in the Premadvani prayers. So any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll stop there. Oh, yeah. I'm sure you had something to say.
Thank you very much for the class. So recently, somewhere in Africa, there was a class, Sunday feast class, and the speaker mentioned the word prostitute a few times in class. And then one parent, a couple became upset and sort of raised the issue with management. And then as a result, there was a whole discussion. And a part of the discussion was, in today's society, like we know that in the scriptures it's mentioned the heavenly society girls, for example. But in today's society here on earth, would you please mind describing how that aspect fits into Vedic culture?
It fits into Vedic culture because there are different kinds of rasas, and some of the rasas are ghastly or chivalrous, and they're based up like Kansa had a certain rasa that he hated Krishna. He was just looking for someone to come and kill him because a voice from the sky had predicted that his death would come from the eighth child of Devaki. So when Sita was described as a prostitute by some people, not all people, but some of the citizens of Ayodhya knew that she had been kidnapped and had lived in the presence of Ravana. So she was considered a prostitute. And it's sometimes said that people who read the Mahabharata, or Ramayana especially, are bewildered because sometimes there's a form of a ghastly or chivalrous rasa, and so Sita had this kind of a rasa, and it's described in the Ramayana that she ultimately was banished from Ayodhya because Ramachandra realized that some citizens were describing her as a prostitute, and they were thinking, what is Ramchandra doing, married to a prostitute? So he went in disguise and walked among the citizens of Ayodhya, and found out that there were a number of people who were calling her a prostitute, and in order to keep the existing order in society, that the king would be married to a prostitute, even though she had successfully undergone a trial by fire and was found to be completely absolved from any sinful activity, because a lot of the low-class people in Ayodhya had thought her a prostitute. Ramchandra went in disguise to find out what they were actually thinking, and because even a small number of people were thinking that the king was married to a prostitute, he had to banish her from the kingdom. So that's part of the Vedic understanding. That's a kind of rasa that's not very common, but it does happen. It's an indirect rasa.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. So, anything else? No? Okay. Hare Krishna.